समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
After Prime Minister Modi made it clear that India would not compromise and would follow its own red lines, especially when it came to farmers, fisherfolk, and dairy, even saying cryptically that he was ready to pay the personal price that he knew was inevitable, US President Donald Trump has escalated the tensions further after he slapped 50% tariffs on India. He has now officially said that the trade talks, the trade negotiations are on hold for now. This even as reports come that more than a $3 billion deal to purchase Boeing jets has been paused, as have other plans to buy US arms, according to Reuters. What happens next? Is this relationship still salvageable? What happens to the Quad Summit scheduled to take place later this month? And how do we make the churn in geopolitics? The China envoy standing up for India, the Prime Minister's impending visit to China, Putin's impending visit to India. So much to talk about. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, we look at what may happen next between India and the United States of America, or will anything happen at all? Relations probably have never been this fraught, at least in my living memory, for years and years. Trump seems to have made this about much more than trade. If this was only about a disagreement on tariffs, why would there be a penalty? Why would there be a 50% tariff, which literally now means that Pakistan and Bangladesh are among countries with lower tariffs than India? Also, what happens now? Trump's response has set into motion a series of unexpected geopolitical churns. Ajit Doval there meeting Vladimir Putin in Russia. Mr. Putin will be coming to India in the near future. The dates, Doval said, have almost been finalized. This even as Prime Minister will be heading to China, and China's ambassador, the Chinese envoy, slammed America and stood up for India. Unexpected developments, particularly given China's support of Operation Sindoor just recently, the support given to Pakistan. And where does this leave India's security challenges? A lot to talk about. Let me introduce our newsmaker on the program today. Professor Raja Mohan is with us, one of India's foremost strategic minds. Thank you, Raja, for joining us. When I was introducing this program, my head was swirling. I thought I was saying things wrong because in the same sentence I have just said, Modi is going to China for the SCO summit. China has stood up for India after giving Pakistan not just weaponry but support in Operation Sindoor. Asim Munir might be going to Washington for a second time. Putin is coming to India. Trump may also, on a parallel track, be meeting Putin. I mean, it looks like the world has gone to hell and not yet come back. I mean, how do you understand what's happening?
Absolutely. I think it's really a strange and surreal moment, both in India-US relationship, as well as in the relationships with Russia and China. We were seeing even in the newspapers this morning that the trade talks were on, and by the end of the month, there will be US trade delegation coming. So I'm not so sure whether actually we are at a point where the trade talks have been cancelled or not. We saw Trump asked a question and he kind of said, not this time. So I'm sure.
I mean, he said, can I play out that clip just for the clarity for our audience? He said, well, not till it's resolved. I mean, he was kind of vague about it. The interpretation most people have is no trade talks for now. Let's listen to the clip and I'll come right back.
To follow up on the India tariffs, do you expect increased trade negotiations, since you've announced the 50% tariff?
No, not until we get it resolved.
Mr. President. So that's all he says. How did you read that comment?
Yeah, I mean, the question and the answer, don't come together into a complete sentence. I mean, making the worst impossible interpretation, which the trade talks are not on, which I think is clearly will be an escalation. I mean, I think India has not said it won't talk, even after the 50% tariffs were announced. India is quite happy to keep talking about where we had left the trade negotiations a couple of weeks ago in Washington. So I think what Trump has done is really, with his public diplomacy, daily barrage of tweets, has made it very, very hard for the Indian Prime Minister to really, engage in a serious, way in which to solve this problem. That is, look, on trade talks, even among the best friends, will have complications. But the way unilaterally Trump has been framing these issues, almost demanding that India meet those. So I think India has not had much option given this to really take this seriously and to find ways to respond. I mean, I think so far, India has been right not to take a confrontational tone, to focus on, remaining open to consultation and negotiations. But I think really the evidence, if the negotiations have actually been cancelled, then I think we are at a clear moment of escalation.
So you're saying that Trump's statement is ambivalent right now when he says no talks for now, let's resolve the issue. That doesn't necessarily mean that the talks have halted.
Yeah, because how do you resolve the issue without talking? So in a way, I mean, it's not clear to me. I mean, that the question was very clear, but the answer was not. But anyway, let's assume that there are going to be no talks. So there's nothing India can do. I mean, if you don't, how do you engage someone who doesn't want to talk? So I think India has to bite the bullet, hold on to its, position and wait for things to pass, because there's no way when you have a head of a state on the other side making it a barrage of constant, hectoring and teasing and pushing you. I think it's no leader of any country, let alone a democracy, will be in a position to really deal with this.
In that sense, what do you see happening next? Let's not get into the technicalities of whether there are talks or there are no talks. The fact is that Trump is lashing out in a manner that is about much more than trade. India's response thus far has come in two forms. One is the MEA calling out the hypocrisy of the West when it comes to trade with Russia, placing figures in the public domain that talk about the import of fertilizers by America from Russia, the import of uranium, the $3.5 billion trade value just in 2024 alone. That is the MEA responding on a point-by-point basis. The Prime Minister has so far not taken the name of Donald Trump, but he has said two things. One, that India will not allow a compromise when it comes to the interests of farmers, fisherfolk, and dairy. And two, and this was intriguing, he knows he will have to pay a price and he's ready to pay that price. It's not clear to anybody what price he means. I'm not sure if you have any takes, but what did you make of the Prime Minister's statement, Raja?
No, I would only see it as actually Prime Minister really taking serious umbrage at remarks of President Trump. And I think if you remember, over the last 2 months, I think the Indian government sources, the negotiators from the Commerce Ministry have repeatedly said India has some red lines, especially on dairy and agriculture. So in that sense, now the PM, without taking Trump's name, without attacking him directly, he's simply saying, look, you can't force me to open my dairy and my agriculture. So I think the main point is being made very clear. And I think in terms of Prime Minister saying that, look, he's willing to pay the price. So I think now we're in the domain of politics. He's communicating to the Indian audience, like this is a moment of challenge for India, and that he's willing to face the challenge frontally. And if that involves his own career, he's willing to put that online.
So that's how you read it, that he's willing to put his career on the line.
Yeah, but yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Elaborate on that further, because it was a very cryptic remark.
Yeah, I think it's more aimed at the domestic audience. I mean, I don't see how, the question of what happens to PM's position in the Indian politics, in the Indian Parliament. I don't think that's going to be fundamentally threatened by what Trump is saying. But I think it's a signal to the domestic audience that this is a serious issue, and a signal to the international community he's not going to be pushed around, that he's willing to pay the price in standing up on agriculture and dairy.
So now let's come to what else is happening. In parallel to all of this, you have NSA Ajit Doval in Moscow. By the way, again, a lot of these things are pre-scheduled, but they acquire a different symbolism because of what's happened with Trump and his tariff war. Doval makes it clear that the dates for a Putin visit to India have almost been finalized. The Prime Minister lets it be known that he will be attending the SCO summit in China. And the Chinese envoy basically stands on the side of India instead of, and speaks up for India. Now, how do we understand this? Because if Operation Sindoor and Trump not getting credit for it is at the heart of his bruised ego, then from an Indian perspective, we know from the Deputy Chief of Army that China didn't just provide weaponry to Pakistan, it gave live imports. The metaphor used was a borrowed knife. And that was a relationship between China and Pakistan in Op Sindoor. And yet, realpolitik now suggests that we are, embarking on a perhaps cautious, perhaps wary rapprochement with China, because, those are the times we live in.
I think it's easy to overinterpret Prime Minister's visit to China, or Mr. Doval's visit to Moscow, or President Putin's visit to India. As you rightly said, these visits are scheduled long before. These are on calendar for a long time to come. But I think what matters at this point, look, that the Chinese ambassador is willing to take joy at India's difficulties with the US. That should not be surprising. For a long time, the Chinese were unhappy with India's relationship with the US. So for them, they will take advantage publicly. But it will be stretched to say India's relationship with the US is changing. India's relationship with China is going to change fundamentally. Look, our relationship with China, as a neighbors, we have serious complications. We have a territorial dispute. We've seen 4 major military crises in the last decade, 2013, 2014, 2017, 2020. Those issues have not disappeared. All that's happened post-Galwan is that 5 years after post-Galwan, we resumed a dialogue. There's been some military disengagement. So we're going to talk to China. As a neighbor, in any case, we had to do that at some point of time. Now, the question is, does this moment immediately change India's relationship with China? I doubt. It's one thing to say, look, we have a problem with the US on trade right now, but our problem with China on trade is even worse. You have a $100 billion trade deficit with China, which is really every year you're handing over $100 billion to China as part of your trade. That's not going to disappear overnight, nor China's relationship with Pakistan. So I think all we are seeing at this point is Trump's public pressure on India, the kind of shattering of the trust that was built carefully over the 25 years. So both Russia and China would want to take advantage of that. That doesn't mean India simply, is a jilted lover on the rebound, just jumping to the other side. Countries don't do that. What they do is really to engage, see where the opportunities are, but fully cognizant of how the other two powers are playing the game.
I agree that this is not from desperation. This is not rebound romance. All of that point is taken. But speaking strictly from India's interests, security interests, why would we be more willing at this point to do business with China, given what's just happened in Op Sindoor, and given that Op Sindoor and the obsessive need for validation of America's role in it seems to be at the heart of Trump being annoyed at this point? I think that just seems contradictory to me, but I understand that there are not a lot of great choices right now.
No, you see, except that the PM is going to China. What is it there that says these problems are going to be solved? And these are long-standing problems. We never stopped trading with China. There were some restrictions were put after Galwan. But the fact is, over the last 5 years, even after Galwan, India-China trade has grown. So has the deficit. So I think it's not anyone's point that India today is trading because we have a problem with the United States. We have a problem with China trade. Whether some of these issues can be addressed in a more positive way, we'll wait to see how the Chinese will respond to the situation. Will they be more accommodating on trade? Will they be more accommodating on the border? Those, I mean, I'm as a realist, as a skeptic, I doubt. But the important thing is at this point, if Russia and China are around, that we need to talk to them. And I would also add, Barkha, you are not the only player in this game. As we said, we might like Russia, but Russia is going to cut a deal if the meeting takes place between Putin and President Trump. Any case, President Trump is saying China is special, Xi Jinping is my friend, we are buddies, and we're going to try and do a deal. So in a sense, look, we are in a world where things are moving. The surprise has been what seemed a stable relationship between India and the US has been unmoored into an unknown place, and that India has to deal with it. But I would just add one thing, Barkha. When we've seen, there was a point when 1992, when the US said they won't recognize Kashmir's accession to India. So we've seen crisis before. It's not as if this is the first crisis in India-US relationship. My sense is, look, India is big enough, strong enough to play this game with restraint and with a sense of confidence, rather than simply, like a ball being kicked around between US, Russia, and China.
Let's come to why you think Trump is this angry. And, we've heard some theories, some speculative, some deductive. It seems to be, as so many people have pointed out, something personal, something much more than a disagreement over farming, agriculture, and fishing and the tariff war. Marco Rubio has not just repeated the claim of America's role in Op Sindoor, he's gone one step further and now used a phrase, "We were directly involved." I haven't heard them sort of use this phrase, "We were directly involved." I'm just going to play this clip out for you and then come right back.
Broader issue of peace. The president is committed to peace and committed to being the president of peace. And so we saw it when India and Pakistan went to war. We got involved directly, and the president was able to deliver on that peace.
So, firstly, he's calling Trump a president of peace, which is really how Trump wants to be seen and wants to be known clearly. He's making another attempt, even with Russia and Ukraine. Do you believe that the comment made by the Prime Minister about J.D. Vance's phone call in Parliament, which was clearly addressed to a domestic political audience, the opposition which was accusing him of surrendering before Trump, that when he said, "Oh, Vance called me 3 to 4 times," and then there's a little titter and he said, "I was busy, then I called him back." Do you believe that that went down badly? Do you believe that there was a thank you of some kind that Trump was expecting, that India could not have offered once Trump had basically tried to steal the moment from India making its own announcement and made it before India could even speak? Like, what is the connection between Operation Sindoor and what's happening right now?
Look, I think, you've been covering the India-Pak crisis for many years. Now, the fact is, every single major military crisis between India and Pakistan, since Operation Brass Tacks of 1987, we've seen the US involved in one form or the other. If you go back to the 2001 attack on the Indian Parliament, before that, the attack on the Srinagar Assembly, you saw actually the foreign minister and the defense minister of the US flying down into India and Pakistan, trying to calm things down. So I think the problem is not that the US made phone calls. I think our own government has repeatedly said it received calls from Rubio and Vance during the crisis. But that the ceasefire happened because India said, look, if Pakistan wants a ceasefire, they should ask us.
Yeah.
So now nobody's disputing that. So India is not saying US did not make any phone calls. The fact is this, I think Trump is over-claiming credit to a process, a complicated process that took place. And I think, and the way, no leader of the government, behaves in this manner, that claiming that, look, he was actually responsible for something happened between the two countries. So I think it's really how you interpret the US role. It was not mediation. There was no talk of mediation. But they did call both sides. And India said, look, we'll stop the war only if Pakistan calls us. True. So I think what you have is Trump over interpreting what happened. And I think India making it clear that this was just a final conversation between India and Pakistan that led to it. So I think the question is really about mediation. I mean, it's not, no one is denying that the US made phone calls, that eventually it was Pakistan that called India. So I think it's really the question of interpretation.
So why is he so angry? What is he so upset about?
Look, my sense is, when we've not seen a global leader of this kind. That even when, in the past, when you had American secretaries of state and defense come here, or the British prime minister come here to calm things down, no state actually makes it as if he's responsible for something that's happened in such a, the kind of, shall we say, arrogant sense that Trump behaves. And I think that is the problem, that we've seen this, engagement of the rest of the world in India-Pakistan conflicts before. But I think this is the first time where the whole thing has been twisted into this kind of thing. You remember 2019, after Pulwama. Even at that time, that was Trump administration in power that time, the US was very helpful to India. In fact, you had the US had put a lot of pressure on Pakistan to release Captain Abhinandan. So I think it is the way the US leader is behaving and taking credit that I think is offensive to the Indian leadership and to broader Indian public.
So where do we go from here? According to you, so technically we don't know, are the talks on, are they not on? You say India has taken the correct stand to not be confrontational. We are seeing two important reports today, one from Reuters, which says that India is putting all the purchase of all arms from US on hold. This is what Reuters is reporting. Particularly, there are multiple media reports of a $3.6 billion Boeing jet deal. This concerns the maritime patrol aircraft that was first approved in 2021. So there is going to be a little bit of this, muscle flexing, obviously. Do you think that this is an inevitable fallout of what's happening? That, all of these deals, and we had a White House statement at one point that almost urged India to purchase more arms from America. And now Reuters reports that arms purchases are on hold. A Boeing deal worth $3.6 billion is on hold. Rajnath Singh's planned trip to Washington is on hold. That doesn't surprise me, the latter. Let's talk about the first two.
Look, I'm not sure. I haven't seen the Reuters report. But are they based on any official statement of the government of India, or is citing sources?
No, it's sources. It's a source-driven report. Yeah.
Look, I think, there is a lot of fishing going on, given the state of the crisis between India and the US at this point of time. But my sense is, whether it is, stopping the purchase of Russian oil, whether it is delaying the purchase of Russian, American arms, I would say, look, let's wait for official reaction rather than basing an analysis on media speculation at this point. But my sense is, India would have, the plan was, if you remember, February 13th this year, when Prime Minister Modi was at the White House, the general understanding was that India would increase the purchase of Russian American arms. In fact, if a trade deal, like most other countries, would have seen India do a package of purchases from the US, packages of Indian investment potentially in the US, that would have been part of the deal. Now, if the deal is itself off, and the president of the US behaves in this manner, but I think it is normal to think of a lot of things will get on hold.
Yeah.
So I would say I wouldn't be surprised if things are slowing down in terms of the engagement on the defense side. But I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that, look, we are at the end of the road, everything is falling apart. But the question is, Trump himself is a man who is known to flip. So I think India is right to hold back, to wait to see how this plays out. But signaling, as the PM has done, very firm in terms of the red lines that India has, and that India is not going to be pushed around by anyone. I would also add, I think we also have to see how the Indian markets behave, today we saw the stock market going down. So what are the kind of consequences that will be there as the Indian industry, foreign investors in India begin to deal with the kind of consequences of what a 50% tariff would mean. So I think a lot of the factors, whether what India does with its previous contracts with the US or the exports between India and the US, I would say there's going to be a lot of action from different directions. But at this point, there is no a sign that, look, things are easing up. A sign would be if the trade talks actually take place, we are in a different place. But right now, it's really things are getting worse than before.
So a final question, what next? So one possibility is an external development, which is that Trump manages to secure a pact between Russia and Ukraine. He has made it clear that he's open to meeting Putin. You even have a statement, I think, from Rubio saying that Steve Witkoff, who was, by the way, in Moscow on the same day as Doval, is heading back with a framework for peace dialogue. Now, let's assume that that happens. Can the US still target India over the purchase of Russian oil? That would be an external development. An internal development could be you keep talking, and you reach some reproach mark. In the middle of all of this, what happens to the Quad summit? Does that get postponed? Does it have any meaning in this environment?
Look, I think in terms of what happens between Russia and the US, in fact, many of us before President Trump took charge, we assumed that, look, Trump's initial inclination to improve ties with Putin would actually be a good outcome for India. That is, if Russia and US were on a reasonable terms with each other, that India's problem in terms of the Russian question would not be a political issue for US and Europe. Now, if you see the first 4 or 5 months of Trump administration, he's actually tried to reach out to Putin, but that did not work out. And now he's flipped to the other side, which is actually raising the pressure on Putin to force, as we say, the peace president wants a deal. Therefore, he's ramping up the temperature. What has happened is that we've got caught in this crossfire, that India has become a collateral damage. Many people have argued that the oil sanctions, at least, or secondary sanctions, were really about putting pressure on Russia through India, through Indian purchases. And I think that seems to be the strategy. So for us, it is, again, it takes us back. Look, US, Russia, China as major powers will continue to make deals with each other. The question for us is not who's good, who's bad, that we did not have too many problems with the US until recently. Now we have several problems. Our problems with China will continue. Our relationship with Russia is good, but Russia is caught in a difficult situation in Europe. So I would say that we must stay calm, manage each of these relationships on its own merits. So if Russia, US agree on a peace deal, that India has always welcomed such an outcome, but whether it automatically lead to a reduction of the tariffs on India, we don't know, because there's nothing predictable about President Trump.
I want to end on an issue of the Modi-Trump relationship. So there's an India-US relationship, and it will eventually outlast Trump. But there was a lot of commentary about a personal rapport that both leaders shared. Now, as you said, the PM has made it clear that he has taken serious umbrage. And even if there is a breakthrough of some kind, some agreement, and it's not going to happen soon, it's going to take its own time. I mean, do you believe that the Prime Minister Modi will ever be at ease with Donald Trump again? Or is this all part of geopolitics? Because, I mean, the same Modi has also been to meet at Nawaz Sharif, has invited the SAARC leaders, and then been very, very, very aggressive when he needs to be.
Look, the fact that the Prime Minister is going to China, I mean, just 5 years ago, the whole country was up in arms on Galwan, what happened in Galwan. So look, I think countries will keep changing, their calculus will keep changing, their engagement will change. So it's not as if once there's a break, nothing will happen. Like everything in politics, nothing is permanent. Trump has got another 3.5 years to go. The US Constitution doesn't allow a third term. And for India, then, I mean, it can wait to see how this plays out. I believe that, look, India and the US as two countries, as two large economies, have made significant investments in each other over the last several decades. Now, I would say, is that investment simply gone because one president wants to change the nature of the relationship? I don't. Second level, I would say the current situation doesn't mean US and China's contradictions have gone. China still threatens the US as the primacy of the Americans, the economic primacy of the US, the military primacy of the US in China. Nor have China's contradictions with its neighbors disappeared, whether it's India, Japan, or Southeast Asia. You saw that, when we had the Philippines president here earlier this week, where India is now exercising with Philippines in the South China Sea, right in the front yard of China, and China reacted to it strongly. So therefore, you have simultaneously multiple lines of action going on. But I think part of growing up in the international system is not to keep saying, look, somebody's good, somebody's bad, but we got to deal with completely different type of situations. My sense is, at a $4 trillion economy on its way to being the third largest economy, India has the depth and strength to pass through this storm, to ride out this storm, because the rest of America, in terms of the Congress, the US business, those constituencies remain to be engaged. Similarly with China. Look, I think for India, we take the US in such a sentimental form. US and China fought a war in 1950 to 53. Thousands and thousands of people died. 15 years later, America and China were buddies against the Soviet Union. Then at the time, China and Russia fell apart. But today, China and Russia are buddies again. So I think these things will keep changing. The question is, through each phase, have we managed to protect our interests? That is the principal question. And my sense is, unlike in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, that India today is strong enough to be able to deal with the current difficult moment in the US relationship. And I think, as I said, everything is transient.
Yeah. Also, I think the important point you make is there's a lot of source-based reportage that is turning, that one has to be very careful of. There was a report in the middle from Reuters also saying that the purchase of Russian oil had been paused, which was then clarified was not the case. And we now have news coming that in response to a Reuters report of Rajnath Singh cancelling the US visit, two sources pointed out that no dates had been even finalized for the visit. So I think there are still attempts to de-escalate and not given to a sort of inflammatory rumor mongering. Just very quickly, Raja, before we let you go, what would you be looking out for in the days to come? Would your eye be on the external developments, on the Trump, Russia, Ukraine talks, or would they be on, I don't know, how the SCO summit goes? What's, and do you think the Quad is inevitably going to get postponed or cancelled?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first, signal in the next few days would be whether the trade delegation comes to India or not. Right. Then if they don't even want to talk, I think we're in a worse place than we are today. And I think that will be a very, very negative development. Second, I think on the question of the Quad summit, I would say dates had not been set. The whole idea was this year, India is going to host the Quad summit. If you go back to the February joint statement by Trump and Modi, there was a sense that, look, we'll get a lot of things done in the interim period so that the Quad summit can take place. And unfortunately, the trade was supposed to be the main element there. And we're now at a very, very difficult place. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Quad summit, they won't say it is cancelled, they might say it's deferred, postponed. So I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen. But if the trade thing doesn't move, then I think quite clearly all the other things are also in an uncertain situation. Now, US-Russia deal, I wouldn't be surprised because Putin needs a deal as well. President Trump also wants to go to China. So if US and China come together, after all, they were buddies through the 80s and 90s and 2000s. So I would say we must be prepared that other relationships will continue to change. So I think it's not that we are in love with America today and we're going to be in love with Russia and China tomorrow. We have a lot of problems with China. We have a lot of uncertainty in terms of how Russia to deal with Russia. So therefore, we have to really not to be jumpy and react to every minor statement, but to recognize this is a 25 years of hard work with the United States has been put in a turmoil by President Trump. We'll have to wait to see how this ends. We have an opening with China. We'll talk to them, and remains to be seen whether China will be positive to India or will they take advantage. If your interlocutor is in a weak situation, It would be shocking if the others won't come and say, hug you and say, look, take advantage of you. But that's life. I mean, that is what the real world is. But I think we are not in a crisis mode of existential crisis. We've seen this in 1971 when the US until late 60s was telling us we are friends with India, and suddenly they became friends with China. China and Russia were communist buddies in the 50s and 60s. They become enemies in the 70s. So we've seen this kind of oscillation. My sense is, unlike in that period, India is stronger today to be able to deal with uncertainty in the external environment. But the key, Barkha, is in the end, it's all about, does India now focus on its internal reform? Does it focus on accelerating its economic growth? Does it do ease of business to ensure that the businesses feel there are other attractions to India to compensate for the Trump tariffs? So I would say next few days, we must watch out what the Prime Minister does really, while there's in an uncertain and external environment, do we do more to reboot Indian economy, to be able to come out of this stronger? And the imperative of external compulsions will make it much more urgent that we do reform at home.
Absolutely. And I think in conclusion, the very important thing that you've said is that Trump has given such an open-ended comment to will the talks continue, that the first thing you have to see is in about 10 days, 15 days from now, will the trade delegation from the US come as it was meant to or not? If there's no talks on the table, then this is much worse than we thought. Otherwise, it might be a bump in the road, a big bump, a big obstacle, but not for the first time that this would have happened. Thank you, Professor Rajamohan. Always a pleasure. And as they say, let's watch the space. Hope to have you back again with us very soon. Take care. See you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.